When you're building a business podcast, you need to think long and hard about the format. Now, I create podcasts for a living. I have seen this firsthand many different times. And by the end of this, you will have 7 different things that you need to consider to have a proper format for your business podcast. Let's get into number 1. What style of show is it? Is it an interview show? Is it solo? Do you have a regular crew? Are there multiple people? You, a co-host, a producer? Like, what does it look like, right? This is the foundation for everything. It dictates the kind of content. It dictates the way that information is coming out. And for a lot of people, I would highly recommend, as much as you see interview shows everywhere, I recommend doing a solo show. Because that means you get to speak. You're showcasing yourself, your business, your thoughts, your strategies, and connecting with your direct audience. So feature you. Start there. You can add guests in time. You can add guests occasionally. But if you're just getting started, especially if you're a solo entrepreneur, be the host, own the show, and own your platform. So that's number 1. Now, the number 2, what's the tone of your show? For example, you're a service provider. How technical are you going to be about what you do? Because being technical might be one of the things that makes you truly great. It makes you stand out, but it also might bore your customers to tears, and it could be terrible content, right? So you want to engage people in a way that makes sense to showcase you and draw these people in to become your customers because you've properly highlighted your business and your solutions. So maybe technical is the right route. It's all up to you, right? What is your tone? What is your energy? What is your style? How do you connect? Are you confident as a speaker? There's a lot of things that go into it. But you need to think about that tone and how deep in the weeds or how casual. For example, is there swearing on your show? There will be on this one. That's going to happen. But is there swearing? You have to make those kinds of decisions and think about that. It will help shape what you do. Now, the number 3 thing to consider when you're starting a business podcast, how long is the show? And a lot of times, again, people want an interview show. They want to go 40 minutes. They want to go 2 hours, right? You probably need 10 minutes, really. Get to the point. What is the thing that is most valuable for people to know? What is that topic? How do you define it? What are the major bullet points? And move on. That's it. People have a lot of things going on. They have limited time. And it's not like the way it used to be where people were in the car for 20 minutes. Like, I came from radio. The whole thing with radio was your audience turns over every 20 minutes because people are in the car every 20 minutes. People work from home now, so you don't need 20 minutes. Like, the formatting is a little bit outdated. So think small, think simple, and think, how can you repurpose this after the fact? But the show doesn't need to be as long as you think. Now, number 4, how are you dividing up the time of that show? If you are going to do 40 minutes, if you are going to do 2 hours, what does that look like? You need to have an approximation that over the course of the show, you're going to do specific things. One of the things that you see, for example, and this is in a lot of entertainment shows, right? Like, if it's pop culture or sports, they might run down the news really quickly. Hey, here's a couple of things that happened. In business, it's usually, here's what happened in the market this week. Here's a quick couple of things, right? Like, they'll go through that, and then they'll have maybe a monologue section, or they'll have a guest on, and then they'll do the monologue. But either way, like, they break out the show. It's clearly defined points. You know what those things are. They do it every single time. You do it every single time, and that's what it is. So think about how you're dividing up the time, and if you're doing any special segments, what are they? Now, number 5, where are you putting the read for your business? So how are you telling people that your business exists and making sure that as you've gotten their attention and they've listened to the show, that you're actually telling them to support you, to follow you, to call you, to book an appointment? Like, whatever it might be, you need to have something baked in for how you're going to let people know, hey, and I do this for a living, right? Like, I'm talking about this topic because I help people with that. For example, I'm doing this podcast about business marketing because I do podcasts for people for business marketing, right? Now, for me, that's not typically when I'll do the read. For me, on this show, it's at the end. But that's how we do it. That's what we thought of. That is our strategy. So when will you do it for you and your business? Now, the next point, number 6, where are you pointing people to, right? So like I said, in that read, be very specific about where you want people to go. You don't want to be arbitrary about this. You're driving them for a specific purpose. For us, going back to the show again, right? At the end of this episode, what you're going to hear is directing you to either call me, because I'd be happy to talk to you on the phone, or book an appointment. But that's what we want you to do, right? Like, we're doing this because it is marketing. We're talking to the public about this. We expect people to hear it and go, oh, shit, Vince, you really know what you're talking about. See, I told you there'd be cursing. So, wow, you really know what you're talking about, and I need you to help me with my podcast. Great. Well, you listened to all of this. You thought it was helpful. You want extra help. Well, great. Now that you're at the end of this episode, give me a call, book an appointment. Let's start talking, see if it's a fit, and we'll go from there. So that's what I do, and you should do that for yourself. Like, listen to the end of this episode. Listen to the read to get the example. That will help you. And last thing, this is a huge one when you're talking about starting a business podcast and making sure that it doesn't go off the rails almost immediately, which a lot of shows do. Who is responsible for what? Who is responsible for what? So many people get into it and they're just like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to do a podcast. It's going to be fun. Do you want to co-host? Yeah, sure. Okay, well, I'll host and you co-host and that's it. And that is not it at all. Who's responsible for all of the recording elements of the show? Cameras, audio, microphones, whatever, the editing. Who's in charge of that? Who's getting it posted? Who's engaging on social media? Who's building marketing elements out of this? Like, there's so many things that go on in a podcast. And if you don't decide from the very jump who is doing what, you are doomed to fail because things are going to fall through the cracks all the time. You'll probably get resentful of each other, and it's just going to be a complete distraction. You won't dedicate the time. It's going to fall apart. So before you do anything, before you record a single episode, talk about who is responsible for what. So with that, there's 7 different things to help you fix the format for your podcast or get you started on the right foot. Again, I'm Vince Quinn with SBX Productions, and check out this exit. Thanks for listening to It's Not Just Talking. Make sure to subscribe wherever you're checking out the podcast. And if you want us to help on your podcast, go to sbxproductions.com or check the show notes to book an appointment.